I'm Annette from MoneySmartFamily, and today we're going to talk about preparing preteens and teens for independence and getting them ready for the real world. Hope you enjoy it.
Money Smart Family.
Today, you're going to see a talk that I did with Chelsea Brennan from SmartMoney Mamas. If you hit the like button or the subscribe button at any time while you're watching, you will be notified when we put up more awesome videos. If you watch to the end, there's an awesome worksheet to help you plan actionable points that you can do to work with your kids. And at the end and in the show notes, there will be a discount code so that you can get a bundle of our products at a super duper discount. You will not want to miss that.
All right, mamas, I sincerely hope that you're ready to laugh because it is going to be a ton of fun. Annette Economides here. She's going to teach us about how to make teens independent money masters. And being that her kids are all my age, she knows what that looks like and she's seen it through to the end. Annette and her husband, Steve, are New York Times bestselling authors, finance bloggers, and national speakers. You might remember them as America's Cheapest Family. She's authored 3 books, America's Cheapest Family Gets You Right on the Money, Cut Your Grocery Bill in Half, and the Money Smart Family System, teaching financial independence to children of every age. So why do we want to talk about teens and money? So often we talk about little kids and allowance and where do we start? And I think that's important. But in many cases, the first time your kid's going to get real independence with money is when they're a teen, right? When they're old enough to work and make big decisions on their own. And Annette and her husband, Steve, have a really great system for giving kids increasing levels of independence so that when they leave your house, when they're ready to grow up and really be adults, it's just the next stage. It's not throwing them off a cliff. It's just the next step up the ladder. So I'm really excited to bring you this talk. Be ready to laugh. Annette has a ton of enthusiasm. She loves this topic. And just to tell you a little bit more about her, they've been on Good Morning America, The Today Show, Dr. Phil, CNN, Fox News, 2020 Nightline, NPR, People Magazine. I mean, I could just keep going all day. And their message of financial hope is reaching millions of people around the world. And now she wants to talk to you about making your teen a money master. So without further ado, here's my good friend Annette. Annette, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here, Chelsea.
Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your family so that people can know where you're coming from?
We started out on a frugal journey like back in 1982 when we were first married, and we started having children, and we even adopted some special needs kids.
Fantastic.
And so when our family was complete, there were 5 children and a mom and a dad. And we had no idea that our frugal journey would end up taking us where it took us, because we ended up all over national TV and national magazines and gosh, you name it, we've done it. And we kind of developed 3 areas that we were really super passionate about. One was our household budgeting, because that helped us to really thrive. The second was how to save money on groceries, because we had a big brood to feed, and we did that really well, and I think pretty healthy. And then the final one was then transferring that baton of frugality and responsibility and earning and spending and saving wisely to our kids. And that's basically really the 3 books that we've written about those subjects.
That's fantastic. So when we talk about kids and money, we see a lot of stuff about how to set up allowance systems with kids and how to teach young kids about money. But I feel like there's this lost period of really teaching teens, which is when we have the most interaction with money as kids, right? So why do you think it's important to teach our teens real money skills?
Oh, golly, it is so important. As a matter of fact, the reason we're so passionate about that is because there is a current statistic out there that says 60% of parents are financially supporting their adult children.
Wow.
Yeah, that is absolutely crazy. That should just not be happening. And so the teenage years are the time to really start transferring that baton over to the young adults as they're becoming young adults, and let them be responsible for more and more and more of the items that they would spend money on.
So are you talking about, their general personal spending, like going out with friends, or is there other budget things that you're really passing the baton over to them that they're taking responsibility for?
That's a great question. I think it's everything. So we want them to earn, we want them to spend smart, we want them to save consistently. Yeah. But yes, we want them to be spending money, earning and spending money for their own recreation, certainly. But it's time to get some real responsibility in there also during those teenage years. So we handed over the baton of you're going to buy your own clothes. And we had our kids drive our car when they first got their license. Okay. And so it was, you're going to pay for your auto insurance, a very easy thing for kids to do. And if you have a kid that's sort of a wild spender, then tell them you want it on a weekly basis. There's every Sunday, you're going to give me money in order for the privilege to drive every month, because driving isn't free.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to unpack there. So first on the clothes. What age did you start this, and were they getting an allowance to pay for those clothes? How did that work?
Oh, there's a couple of questions in there. Yes. First of all, we had a special system. It was called our MoneySmart Kid system, where there was payday once a week around our house. And payday was, there were 4 points: the morning point, the chore point, the school point for getting homework done and schoolwork done, and the roundup point. And so we taught them about this earning system, and payday was once a week, and they were rewarded for the more initiative they showed and the harder they worked, the more they were rewarded. And really, that's what happens in real life. And we wanted to simulate real life. We also wanted to get money into their hands. There were chores that they did just because they were part of our family and they didn't get paid for those, like preparing for the holidays and the events. There was always a list. People got to put their name next to different items and help to prepare for those things. But so there were free things, but there were also paid things. I know this is going to sound crazy, but because we started our kids when they were very young, most of them were buying their own clothes by the time they were 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that may sound extreme, but remember, our kids had been handling money, dealing with money, budgeting money, like I said, from the time they were little. So it was very familiar to them and not at all weird or uncomfortable.
Can you put a number around that? So very early, are you talking 3 or 6 or what age did you start?
Okay, now this is going to get crazy here, but remember, we had 5 and there was an 11-year span between top and bottom. And so, when our 11-year-old was doing the MoneySmart Kids program, the baby was 1. And so she literally grew up around this. Abby was crazy ahead of her time. And so by 3, she was running to the payday table. She just had one little bank. And we started the kids with them, with just at 3, we're just giving them change. Okay. But she still was part of it. And it was absolutely precious. I wish now that we had videoed it. I really do. But she'd come to the payday table with her coins and she would be like, what's this one? How much is this worth? And what's this one? And how much is this worth? So at 3 years old, she was already starting to learn what cash value was. At 5, they weren't really working actual math on envelopes. At 5, they had a 3-compartment bank, give, save, and spend, because we want to make it simple. We want them to be successful. Okay, so you do have to keep in mind what is age appropriate. Okay, and so at 3, it was just one little bank. At 5, it was a 3-compartment bank. At 8, that's when they switched to the envelopes. And that's when they had to become proficient in adding, subtracting, decimals, percentages. Our kids were so good with actual cash that when they got their first part-time jobs, they could balance their tills to the penny. And all their employers loved having them. And if someone called out on a shift, our home was the first one that got called.
All right, you got it. So that's great. And managing that money as your kids became teens, when did they ever move away from the envelope system and start using a debit card, or did they stick to cash?
That's a great question too. Basically, as teens, they did the envelope system until they were around 17 or 18.
Okay.
And then they switched to a card and a bank account. I mean, they already had a savings account, but now they were working with checks and debit cards and all that stuff right between the 17 to 18.
Was that a hard transition for any of them to make towards having this like less tangible, budget system and cash management system?
Not at all, because they were so familiar with the value of money. They knew what it was. They saw us using our debit card we didn't have credit cards at the time, but now we do, but we didn't then. And they saw us, like they seamlessly saw the transition. They knew the value of money, and there was absolutely no problem.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Now, what I would say, Chelsea, is if somebody is starting out their teens, like say they've never done it. We had a leg up, obviously, because we started our kids from a young age. But if somebody is starting this, like they're like, oh my gosh, I really need to teach my kids about money. And where do I start? Because they're 15, or they're 17. Start with the cash envelopes. And you'll be able to pretty quickly, because of their age and the way they're going to absorb things and understand things, you'll be able to transition pretty quickly into that debit card with a bank account.
Understood. So your kids were ahead of the game, right? Because they started so young. But when they were teenagers, how much were you dictating was there any rules around how much they had to save or how much they had to donate, things like that? Or had you really handed it over to them?
That's a great question. No, we didn't. And maybe we should have done that a little bit more. As they did progress to college age, they pretty much got to choose. By then, they were pretty much independent, and so they did get to make their choices. But when they were teens, we kind of set some ground rules for that. It was save 10 to 20%. So there was some leeway. They could choose what to do. Charity was 10%. Clothes was, we took the remaining. So save was 20. Give was 10. It's been a while since I've had to think about this. So that's 30. You have 70 left. So we did 35 to close and 35 to spend. And that was the percentages. That's how it broke down. And the cool thing is when they got a certain balance in their clothing envelope, like say they had $100 in their clothing envelope, then they could just put it all and spend after that. So we did have limits and guidelines. And we did have what I call veto power, because we had standards for dress. And I talk about that in the book. If a son wanted to pick a t-shirt and it was sort of a little off color, we'd laugh together. I'd say that's really funny, but I don't want you wearing that in public, that kind of a thing. If our daughter found a really cute outfit or a dress or a whatever, but it was a little bit more revealing than I thought it should be, I would say that's awful pretty, but not good for public,
Yeah.
And so they were usually okay with that. They understood our standards, and some of them did choose to test those boundaries a little bit when they got out on their own. But what's interesting is even though they did, and I was like, just hold on, don't freak out. A lot of them have circled right back around and realized some of the principles that we taught were so common sense and so good that they're okay with it now.
So we have so much to cover here, but I'm like jumping all over the place. I feel terrible. But one of the things I know that people are gonna have questions on is like, did you have any differences in how you treated your boys versus your girls with this, right? And I'm just thinking about like girls' clothing being more expensive or potential of it being more expensive, depending on how you chose to treat it, or relationships and other management if your boys were treating girlfriends, things like that. How did you handle that in the house?
Oh boy, that's
heavy question.
You've got two questions there in one. Okay, so as far as clothing, what we did is we introduced our kids to thrift stores and consignment stores.
Okay.
And there are, I know we are spoiled. The Phoenix area has amazing consignment stores. I mean, you would never know that these clothes are used. They come in perfectly clean, perfectly pressed. They're absolutely beautiful. And like there's one consignment store near us called Turnstiles. Like right now they have clearance twice a year. So right now a certain color tag is 50% off. In about another week, it'll be 75% off. And then the final week, it'll be $2 items.
Wow.
I got a turquoise 2-piece suit for $2.
That's fantastic.
Nobody could believe it. So we've introduced our kids to all of these. And again, some of them have tested that as they've got out on their own, but others of them have been like, yeah, that's the way to go. You know, once they're on their own, they're responsible for themselves, so they can choose whatever they want. But, you know, here with our MoneySmart Kids system, with the earning and the spending, they had limited funds. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted them to live within their means. Our thinking was, gosh, if they earn a boatload of money, they can adjust. No problem. But if they end up marrying into a situation where they're going to have to count their pennies, isn't it better to have learned how to live that way? Because you can always go up, but going back, wow, that's hard. And we've seen marriages dissolve because of that kind of an issue. So I'd rather lean on the side of frugal living, and the sky's the limit from there. And then the second half of your question was
relationships.
Oh gosh, that's a whole Pandora's box. Okay. So basically with our kids and money system, the guys and the girls really were treated the same.
Perfect.
Because like I said, by let me just kind of wrap that up before we head. Because of the resources we showed them, they could find whatever they need. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as relationships, oh boy, this is a soapbox for me.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, hopefully you all won't hate me, but I think there's way too much emphasis on our culture about saying that you are not significant unless you are in a romantic relationship. And that is absolute hogwash. You can be so significant. You can be contributing so much to your family, your society, your neighborhood, your clubs, just by being the best of who you are. And that's what we wanted to emphasize with our kids. And of course they had romantic relationships, but we kind of held them at bay until they got to college. And then of course, you know, our daughters are real cute and our sons were really handsome and sensitive, and we worked out regularly, so they were well built. And there was no problem, Chelsea. There was absolutely no problem, okay? One of the things we did do is, and I know this is not for everybody, but I love hospitality. And of course, I always find great deals on food. So we let our house be the fun house. The kids could come over. We had tons of board game nights. And we just had so much fun. You'd be surprised at how many times those kids put all their technology away because we were having fun laughing and playing together. And then I got to know all their friends. And I could say to my one daughter, no, I don't think that one's a good idea. And let me tell you why. We played with our kids when they were teenagers. Don't miss that opportunity, parents, to play with your kids. We had this awesome game called Sardines. It is hide and seek in the dark in reverse. I'm serious. Let me explain this. We played this game with probably 10 to 15 teenagers for 4 hours one night, okay? Basically, the house becomes dark. Somebody becomes the sardine. They go hide somewhere in the house. And depending on what was going on in our house, I'd tell them that room's off limits this time. This room's off. Okay, but these are all on limits. Everybody else goes off in our back laundry room. The light goes off, okay? Now everybody has to take off and try to find the sardine in the dark, okay? And this is what happens. You call each other's names, okay? Mm-hmm. And suddenly people start to disappear because they find the sardine. And when you find the sardine, you sidle up next to him and you become silent. So eventually, if you can keep quiet long enough, There's one or two people left trying to find the sardine group. That's why I got the name sardines, because it's like sardines in a can.
Yeah.
I'm serious. We had a ball playing this, and everybody took turns being the sardine. And so I want to say, parents, do not miss the chance to play with your kids. And when they're teenagers, they're so much fun. They even come over as young adults, and we still play board games.
which is so great. My mom was here like 2 days ago playing board games, which was so fun. So I think treating them equally and letting them budget that as they want is a great method, especially just for women in general. And like, this is obviously an audience of moms, and we're all moms here. Letting our girls know that that there's equality and that they need to be empowered with their own money, I think is fantastic. The next layer post that I think is, we mentioned cars and how your kids drove your cars at first. How did you handle paying for insurance? Did you ever get pushback from your kids about the fact that their friends did not have to pay for their car insurance, or was this just expected?
Absolutely not. We never got pushback for that. And the reason why is because they had been managing their money for so long. I hate to say this, but I have to. Our kids absolutely were disgusted with their friends that they weren't paying for their insurance. They thought, you are a teenager or a young adult. Yeah. You should be responsible. Why are you letting your parents do that? That was the attitude our kids had.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? So they were kind of appalled by kids living off of their parents. They thought it was ridiculous. And, driving our car at first meant cheaper insurance, because they really nail you bad for the teenagers. Yeah. And so out here in Arizona, it's going to be different everywhere depending on where you live. But here in Arizona, when the kids, and we drove old cars, when the kids drove our cars, their insurance as a teenager was about $600 every 6 months.
Okay.
So that's $100 a month. Easily a part-time job could pay for that. Mm-hmm. Because they wanted money for other things as well, right? They didn't want to just have all their money going towards car insurance. And like I said, if you're starting this out, do the math. Figure out what it costs for your teenager to be on a policy and what it does for your teenager not. And that's the difference, is what you charge the teenager. And if you're just starting this and your teens don't have any kind of budgeting system, then do it on a weekly basis. Ask for money on a weekly basis.
Did your kids ultimately buy their own cars when they were still in high school?
They actually did ultimately buy their own cars, because when they got their part-time jobs, they were earning so much money, and they learned how to live frugally at that point, that they were able to sock most of that away. And so by the time they were college age, they could buy a car.
Okay, very cool. For those parents that are just starting out, though, that don't have your kids' background, right? How do you recommend parents have that conversation? Like, okay, hey, we haven't had this expectation before, but we do now, and here's why. Like, where would you start?
Okay, I think you would just say, you know what? We've thought long and hard. We've read some books, and we've decided we really want you to be successful as a young adult. And part of being successful is knowing how to handle money, how to earn it, how to spend it wisely, how to save it consistently. And so we're going to start doing some things differently around here. The first thing we're going to do is, we'd like you to get a job. And the best time to look for part-time jobs, I'm going to give you a hint. We talk all about that in our book, but the best times are April, right before the summer crowd is looking.
Yeah.
August, when everything is changing. Kids are going off to college. So you've got available jobs. April, August, and October for the holidays. And you think, oh gosh, well, if you get in October, then they can just lay you off after Christmas. Guess what? Where our kids worked, there was always a discussion about who were the best new pickups for employees. Mm-hmm. And they always kept one or two of the new employees after Christmas, because Christmas, the holidays were their trial period. And if they shined, guess what? They had a permanent part-time job. So those are the times of year to pick up a part-time job. January is a bad time to look for a job. So you have to know when to look. And even though a lot of the applications are online, our kids always went into the store and met the assistant managers. It's rarely, this is the other thing, it's rarely the store manager that does the hiring. Mostly it's one of the assistant managers. Okay. So go into the store, shake hands, and meet somebody. That's how our youngest daughter, Abby, ended up getting her first and awesome job. She ended up working at Michael's Arts and Crafts, and we had done so many crafts as a craft family, entering the state fair and everything, that she ended up being like the kids' teacher for all of their craft classes.
That's fantastic.
Great job.
When did your kids start working?
Okay, that's a great question. And here you are going to hear some bias, but hear me out and listen why.
Okay.
The guys got jobs younger than the girls. Okay. We always talked about stranger danger, safety. All three of our sons are Eagle Scouts. We live in a toxic society today where women are preyed upon. Human trafficking is abhorrible, and it's real, and it's epic. So our daughters, we talk to them all the time about, someone being too friendly, finding an assistant manager or a manager to just sidle up next to. And this happened to our daughters all the time. So our daughters did not get jobs till they were 17 or 18 because I wanted to make sure they were safe. It's horrible that we have to think about that as parents today, but it is absolutely the truth. So you've got to talk about it with your kids. And I always knew who they were with and where they were. And I knew the families that they were hanging out with. And most of the time, I know this is a double standard, but it is, unless I knew the family really, really well, they could go to a sleepover, but they couldn't sleep over. Mm-hmm. In other words, they could go there till 10 or 11 at night, but then I would pick them up. But yet every parent trusted us, and we had sleepovers over here.
Yeah.
And one time we had a huge party on New Year's Eve. Kids slept over. All the guys were on sleeping bags in the family room. And I said, okay, all the technology on the dining room table. One guy looked at me and goes, well, I was planning on playing video games all night. I'm like, sorry, dude, not at my house. I wish we had taken a picture. The dining room table looked like a raid. It looked like some kind of raid. It was covered with technology, and they all slept really good. So at my house, parents knew when there was a sleepover, the kids slept. Mm-hmm. There was an actual lights out, whether it was 11 or 12, there was a lights out.
So were your girls, did they get more on payday than from you guys until they were 18?
That was the hard part. We probably should have done that, Chelsea. That would have been smart. No, they got the same. But you know what? Actually, between the guys and the girls were more frugal. And the girls, I hate to say it, but they really excelled financially. They just did. I mean, the tools we gave them, they flew with it. They just flew. The guys would go through some difficulties now and then. We had one son that would just spend every bit of spend money he ever had all the time. And, one time we wanted to go someplace and he had no spend money. And I was like, I'm so sorry. You can go with us. I think we were going out to ice cream that night or something, and they were going to use their money. Everyone was going to use their money, but he didn't have any. So I'm like, you can go with us, but you don't have any money.
Yeah.
And that's really painful to do as a parent, very painful to do. But I think it's important because kids have to know there's limits at some place. And I'm not going to name who this was, but one time we heard that Target was having this clearance on Legos, and so many of our kids love Legos, even the girl Legos. We all trotted off to Target. Everybody had their envelopes. And this one child that really struggled with spend didn't put his money envelopes in his envelope where he was supposed to put them. So we got to the checkout and everybody was buying their stuff and he didn't have his envelopes. And I said, I'm sorry, you can't get something today. Don't think of me as a wicked witch.
Oh, no.
I wanted the kids to have real life. This is real life. When you run out of money, you can't spend, right? This is real life. Well, he was furious with me, kind of threw a teenage tantrum. We were finishing up, they went to the car and the checker looked at me and she said, oh my gosh, I wish so much I had done this with my kids. She said, I have one that's a mess today. And if I had done this, maybe that wouldn't have been the case.
Yeah. Has he learned as he's gotten older?
He has. He's definitely calmed down. He's definitely more responsible. Still has issues to work out, but I'm pretty proud of our kids.
That's fantastic. Congratulations. And your point about the Legos and the ice cream, did your kids cover all of those expenses, or did you have family events that were on mom and dad? Like, how did you split that?
We did. And again, this is going to be so ridiculous, but like, say we were going out to eat, we would set limits and we would say, we'll spend X amount per person. Mm-hmm. If you want to spend more than that and kick in your money to buy extra items, you can do that.
Okay.
And so we always had limits for things. And there was no one was ever upset about that. We never had tantrums. We never had anger. No, nothing. It was just, okay, that's mom and dad's limits. Everybody has limits. But I would like an extra XYZ, so I'm going to kick in some of my money for that.
It's all about consistency, right? If they know that that's the expectation, it's much easier to get them to handle it.
Right. And there were times like when we're on vacation, we're going to have fun that week and we're going to spend and we're going to pay for all their food that week. They're going to use their spend money for souvenirs but so there were times we covered everything.
Absolutely. So how did you coach your boys in particular, because they were still in high school, with balancing work and extracurricular activities and their schoolwork?
Yeah, great question. Well, because we've been managing money for forever, and we talked about everything. They kind of knew what the expectations were and what they even knew what they could handle. Mm-hmm. Like at one point, our youngest son ended up on a baseball team that wanted to become a touring team. And we looked at him and we said, I don't think we have the money for this. And I'm not sure you have the time. And he said, no, I don't. Let's find another team.
Wow. That's a big step to take for a kid.
Yeah. So, they were very reasonable and they did a fine job juggling everything. They did not pick activities that had to meet every day. Okay. So like we never pursued gymnastics, even though probably our youngest daughter would have been good at that, because that would have required every day and they just didn't have the time for every day. But they found totally worthwhile activities. There's a whole chapter in our book on character building activities. And all of our sons did scouting. Our oldest daughter did the Congressional Award out of Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And it was a two-year term thing with personal development, physical fitness, all these different things. And she got to the gold level and we got to go to Washington, D.C. for a ceremony for her to receive the gold medal. There was a bronze, silver, and gold certificate and then a bronze, silver, and gold medal. And that was a wonderful family vacation. 2 weeks, we were in the D.C. area. Then we went down to visit an aunt and uncle in South Carolina. It was marvelous. Our youngest daughter was very involved in 4-H and actually made it to the leadership team of the entire state and was on the leadership team of a camp and ran a camp for the week and got to a very high level. And really, it was marvelous.
And I know you can't separate the two, right? But I think that from my perspective, having that independence early, right? Even if it was little things with money, creates so much more confidence to pursue all the leadership things your kids did, right? You said all three of the boys were Eagle Scouts.
Yes.
And the girls rose to such prominent positions in their activities as well. I think just like telling kids that they can set a goal and achieve something, that they can manage their own lives, ties into everything else, right? It's not just money.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so by us giving them that gift of working them towards financial independence, even at a young age, you're right. They felt like they could achieve and tackle anything. They knew how to be organized. They knew how to set goals. It was great to watch them.
And just the last comment on the jobs, how much were they working? Was this 5 hours a week, 20 hours a week?
I think our kids worked an average of 10 to 15 during the school year. Okay. But then they knew that their bosses knew over the summer and like those weeks of Christmas, like the week before Christmas and the in between and the week after, whatever, however it worked out, they could work more, and they certainly did.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I did not work during the school year. We played hockey and our schedules just were too inflexible, but I worked full time in the summer, and actually 2 of the summers I worked 2 jobs. So I was working like 60 hours a week in the summer.
Yeah.
Which was chaos, but I'm always curious how that ties in.
And Chelsea, I think it depends on where you live, because out here it's really hard to get a full-time job in the summer. Because Phoenix is so hot in the summer, it's not our tourist time. It's actually dead. So if you even have a part-time job, you're lucky in the summer. Unless you were a lifeguard and you worked at one of the water parks. That would be like the only exception. But our kids stayed busy doing a whole lot of other stuff during the summer.
Yeah, I worked on a tobacco farm of all things, which in New England, there's only a certain season. So it really picked up from March, April through September, October. So that summer period was hot here. They were always looking for people who would work as many hours as possible.
Yeah.
Which was good. So one thing that we haven't covered super deeply, we've touched on it, but peer pressure, what friends are getting, what other families are doing. You said your kids were kind of, a little bit, it's probably not the right word, but a little bit judgmental about their friends. How do you think parents should handle those conversations? Because not everyone's going to be starting from where you guys started.
Right. I get that. And I used to say to our kids, well, no, I didn't. So they were, and that's the way it is. But I should have said, hey, go easy on your friends. If they haven't had the training, they're not going to know.
Yeah.
And I would just say, yes, when you're starting during the teenage years, I would say, it depends on how old they are. But as soon as you can, you need to be starting to say, we do things differently at our house. And different is okay. Different is okay. And the more you get that message into them, that will help them to stand up to that peer pressure. My oldest daughter literally had friends take her to the mall and try to rehabilitate her and convince her that she should buy clothes at the mall rather than at the thrift stores. And when she got home, she said, Mom, our shirt was $25. That's insane. So it really didn't have any effect on our daughter, but their friends tried. And our kids got incredible compliments on how they were dressed and how they looked. And, at one point, this is several years ago, but our daughter Abby loved American Eagle jeans. And this is probably almost 10 years ago. Anyway, she went online on eBay and found them for between $7 and $10. And she bought several pairs that she loved off of eBay because that was her favorite brand. And she still didn't pay retail for them. And she still was happy with them.
And I think that's tough too, is like kids can be mean too, right? Of that, your daughter's friend sounded like they were doing it a little bit out of jest, but how helping kids navigate when people are just being mean for the sake of being mean is tough.
It is. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but eventually your kids are going to need to gravitate toward like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're always hanging out with very wealthy kids that are all about how to take advantage of mom and dad and buy the newest, latest, greatest, they're never going to feel comfortable in that place if they've been trained over here.
Mm-hmm.
So we were lucky enough that our kids found like-minded kids that also had frugal families, and or even if it wasn't quite our standard of frugal, it was at least not over here. It was more like in the middle over here. Yeah. So it was doable. So yeah, and even as adults, we kind of have to hang out with like-minded people, don't we? I mean, I don't hang out with people that have servants, right? I just don't.
But I think it's really hard, right? I mean, like, we always, in our house, we've always been, this was not how I grew up, but we've always been in this kind of like frugal situation, and we don't have high quality taste, but not quality, you know what I mean? But I worked at a hedge fund, and I was surrounded all the time by people with extravagant spending habits and extravagant what they perceived as needs. And that was really hard. And like, we bought our first house, and I remember multiple people being like, why did you buy in that town, like in that neighborhood? Like, it wasn't like one of the, premier areas outside of Boston. And that, even as an adult, was like a little bit of a hit to your ego, right? Of like,
yes,
questioning your own behavior.
Yes.
And giving kids the confidence and the practice when they're young of like, hey, you can't just do what everybody else wants to do. It's so hugely important.
And our kids had been doing it for so long. Like, if they were in your situation, they would have said, hey, I'd rather be debt-free faster than drowning and up to my eyeballs trying to survive financially. They would have had a comeback because of how long we had been doing it with them.
Yeah, and you can't always do that at work, right? That's a touchy. You gotta be careful with colleagues. But my peer had bought a house. Our house was, it's still Boston suburbs, so our house was like $500,000. But my peer had bought a house on less property, on an older house for $1.2 million.
That's insane.
And I was like, I'm not doing that. That's crazy.
Good for you. Good for you.
So I agree that like the earlier you can start, the more you can give them that practice, the more confidence they'll have. The last thing I want to talk about is college, right? And like how you pay for college and how you talk to kids about that cost and what they're really getting themselves into if they have to take out student loans, if they have to help pay. How did you guys navigate that with 5 kids?
Okay. We're not going to be normal here. All right. So, because we are so frugal, people may look at us really strange and say, there's no way. And I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But so I'm going to give you the super frugal perspective. Okay. Our kids started taking AP classes in high school. Okay. So by the time they were this is part of their, ambitiousness to everything else. By the time they were college age, they had 30 college credits under their belt. Wow. They were all the general classes, okay? Mm-hmm. The math and the English and, maybe a science class, some of the humanities. Gosh, it's been a while. Have to go back there. And we just went for scholarships. There's so many scholarships out there. And most parents think, well, if my kids aren't great in sports, if they aren't fabulous in academics, and if they don't have a talent for music, we can't find scholarships. And that is absolutely not true. There's far more money out there than people realize. And don't neglect the small ones. Everybody wants the Coca-Cola $10,000 scholarship. But, Sally doesn't want to bother with the $500, financial something scholarship. And yet 10 of those make $5,000. And oftentimes you don't even need to do anything for them. You literally just fill out a 1-page application. And there was one year our son Joe got paid to go to college for one year because he had so many grants and scholarships come in. And even his counselor said, I've never seen anything like this. But Joe is a really, really good writer. And one of the scholarships that he applied for was a $500 scholarship. And he got a letter back saying, oh, we know this was supposed to be a $500 scholarship, but we didn't have enough applicants. So we're giving you double the amount. You're getting $1,000.
That's amazing.
Yeah. If a high school student spends 10 hours and earns $1,000 in scholarship money, that's $100 an hour.
Yeah.
So, parents can help with that. I mean, they can help research and find the scholarships. They shouldn't do all the work. The kids need to do the work, but the parents can certainly help with that. So our kids, all of them went to college. It's just crazy. Like our oldest son is earning ridiculous money, and he has only a 2-year degree.
Oh, wow.
And that's all he needed for his industry. Okay. So, and he earns really good money. Our second child and our oldest daughter, she has dyslexia really bad. So she struggled through school. Mm-hmm. And she got a 2-year degree and said, Mom, I am done. I said, okay, you can be done. And now she has an Etsy shop. She's an artist. She makes pet memorial. She does these little animals out of clay, and she makes they send her pictures of a deceased cat or dog, and she makes a little clay statue or ornament and sends it back to them. And last Christmas, she couldn't even breathe. She couldn't even get up her Christmas decorations. She was so busy with her Etsy store. There's always ways to make money, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So do you have any places to point people about finding ways to get college credits while you're in undergrad? Because I know you and I had talked about, there's the AP classes, but there's also other resources to pick up some college credits.
The college chapter in this book is the longest chapter. And it goes into all how you can take CLEP testing, how you can just go to the community college and have it be dual credit. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we talk about that in the book, but I think it would take too long for you and I to have that discussion. Totally. But there are myriads of strategies. Yes.
And did any of your kids graduate early with those credits?
Actually, yes. Our son, Joe, got a bachelor's in business administration. And he got to graduate a semester early. He did transfer schools at one point, so he lost a little bit in that transfer. But he still graduated a semester early. But he's the one that didn't even pay for college. So
yeah, I graduated a year early. It was like the best thing. That's fantastic. Okay, so any final words to share for parents especially parents that are just starting out, right? Like just starting with 13-year-old or 14-year-old getting in. What advice do you have for them?
Okay, well, the thing I really wanted to share was for all parents. Mm-hmm. And I know this is about teens, but it's especially important. The movie The Help talked about the nannies and what they shared with the children that they took care of. And they shared with the children, they always said, like, I want to say almost every day, you're smart, you're kind, and you're important. Mm-hmm. Teen suicide is at an all-time high. Mm-hmm. Do your kids know that you think they're smart? Do your kids know that you're encouraging them to be kind? Do they know that you think they're so important and valuable? We cannot underestimate that. Don't just tell your kids they're beautiful, because beauty is a fleeting thing. One car accident and that can be gone. And where does their worth come from, right? Some freaky accident. You can say, and I wrote this down because I wanted to get it right. You can say that outfit you chose looks beautiful on you. You can say what you did with the neighbor's child or your cousin, that was a beautiful thing and very thoughtful. So you can use beautiful, but don't just tell them they're beautiful. That doesn't give them deep worth. It doesn't. Spend time with your kids. That's what I'm going to say. Yes, money is important, but spend time. We didn't get to talk about food. Even if you don't have time, come up with 10 things that you can cook easily. Crock pot meals, macaroni and cheese with pickles, tacos. and do it with your teen. Have your teen help you spend time together, even if they don't want to at first, even if they've become so addicted to their technology, they think their technology is the most fun to spend time with. You say, no, come on, I want you to spend time with me, but we need to get this done. So let's just do it together.
Awesome. And Annette, where can people find you, especially if they want to, dive in more on your MoneySmart family system? Where should they go?
Okay, great. Our website is MoneySmartFamily.com. And we have a package, okay? And it's going to have the MoneySmart family system teaching financial independence to children of every age. It's going to have our book. It's going to have a MoneySmart Kids Kit. It's going to have an audio download seminar about kids and money.
That's fantastic, Annette. And thank you so much for sharing your experience for us, and congratulations on all your kids' success.
Thank you, Chelsea. It was great to be here today.
We're so glad that you watched this video. Leave a comment about awesome things you've done with your kids, or leave a question and I will be happy to answer those. If you want more money saving ideas, make sure you watch these videos next.